coming? Oh. Okay, we'll get started now. But welcome to the Agoura Hills City Council meeting of April 8th, 2026. At this time, please silence all cell phones and other electronic devices. If you wish to speak or submit a written comment, please complete a comment card for each agenda item and submit to the city clerk prior to the public comment portion of the item. I will now call this meeting to order. We're going to start with our land acknowledgement. And the city acknowledges that we occupy land that was inhabited and still inhabited by the Chumash Nation. Descendants of the Chumash still remain, and we honor and pay respects to their elders and the groups that make up the past, the present, and emerging as they continue their stewardship of our lands. We have a responsibility and a commitment to elevate the stories, culture, and community of the original inhabitants of Agoura Hills. We're grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on these lands. For the Pledge of Allegiance, I will defer to City Manager Hamburger. If you could lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, that would be wonderful. Thank you, Nate. That was great. Moving on to roll call, I'll defer to the city clerk.
Good evening. Councilmember Anderson?
Here.
Councilmember Anstead?
Here.
Councilmember Sylvester?
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Klein-Lopez?
Here.
Mayor Wolf?
Here.
Mayor Wolf, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Moving on to report of closed session, I will defer to City Attorney Lee.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor. Direction was given to staff. No reportable action taken this evening. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Now moving on to the approval of the agenda. Will the makers of the motion and the second to approve the agenda state your names?
Councilmember Sylvester moves to approve the agenda.
Councilmember Anstead, second.
I'll now defer to the city clerk for roll call.
Councilmember Anderson?
Aye.
Councilmember Anstead?
Aye.
Councilmember Sylvester?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Klein-Lopez?
Aye.
Mayor Wolf? Mayor Wolf, you have approval 5-0.
There's an update to the agenda. I'm going to defer to Community Development Director Nesevic to give us an update on agenda item number 6.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. So tonight, our applicant for the pre-screen has requested to move that item to come back at a later date. They wanted an opportunity to provide some renderings for the project, so it's a request by the applicant to come back and present that pre-screen at a later date.
Great, thank you so much for that update. Moving right along for presentations, and there are none tonight. So, the fun stuff, Intergovernmental Special Purpose Committee and Departmental Reports. We are thrilled to be joined by our good friend Daniel Vicente from Supervisor Horvath's office. Daniel, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members, city staff. Thank you so much for welcoming me into your lovely chambers once again. Proud to be here on behalf of Supervisor Lindsay P. Horvath, our supervisor at the County Board of Supervisors. I'm going to run through some things, and if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. We are hosting a Topanga evacuation drill. I went ahead and sent all that information to the respective city managers in our Las Virgenes and Conejo Valley areas, so that they are aware that if they hear about people evacuating Topanga, it is just a drill. It is not an actual emergency. That will be happening on this is completely wrong on my sheet, but it is Saturday, April 18th from 9 a.m. to noon, and that'll be at King Gillette Ranch in Calabasas. It's so our residents can better understand what to do in the event of a wildfire or emergency situation, and everyone is welcome to attend. So if you guys want to come out and deal with the heat that day, you're more than welcome to. We'll be at the Diamond X Ranch, so make sure to wear tall shoes in case there's rattlesnakes. The board is taking action against fraud in home health care and the hospice industry in Los Angeles County because some companies have been taking advantage of vulnerable seniors and patients. The goal is to better protect residents and make sure care providers are actually doing what they're supposed to. Right now, oversight can be confusing because multiple agencies are involved. The county wants local, state, and federal agencies to work together more closely so fraud cases do not fall through the cracks in Los Angeles County. Supervisor Horvath also broke ground on a $14 million water project in Malibu that will improve water pressure and make it easier for firefighters to respond during fires. The project will benefit Malibu, Topanga, and Sunset Mesa. The project is part of a larger effort to modernize the local water system, serving more than 20,000 people in the Santa Monica Mountains. The board is also moving forward with the plan to improve services for young people in county juvenile facilities by focusing more on youth development, education, supportive services, and positive outcomes. Metro also approved the next step for the K-Line Northern Extension, which would create a new rail connection from the South Bay to LAX through Mid-City, and eventually all the way up to West Hollywood and Hollywood. This would become the first major north-south rail line through the middle of Los Angeles and make it easier for people to get to jobs, housing, and major destinations without driving. Supervisor Horvath also introduced a motion to better connect mental health services with folks on the street who may be unhoused and having mental health crises. It is unrealistic that we can expect someone who is having a mental health crisis to take themselves to a clinic, and so we are meeting people where they're at. The idea is to make it easier for people experiencing homelessness and serious mental health challenges to get connected to mental health treatment, housing, and long-term support. Supervisor Horvath is also asking the county to study the possible impacts of the proposed Warner Brothers merger because there are concerns that it could lead to entertainment industry job losses. The county wants to understand how many jobs could be affected and what support may be needed for workers if there are layoffs or other disruptions. She has also asked County Council to draft a letter to the U.S. Department of Justice and to initiate contact with states' attorneys general, including our own, to better understand the impacts that the entertainment industry could have. And there's also some concerns there with some of the transparency that we've seen around that merger as well. The county extended price gouging protections for residents impacted by the fires so businesses cannot unfairly raise prices on rent, goods, or services while families are still recovering. There was one part of it that the board has decided to separate as part of that, and that is the protection for hospitality. So any kind of motel or hotel rooms, data shows that people who were fire impacted are no longer staying in those, so we did not think that those were necessary to extend. This will come before the board again within the next 2 weeks, and they will consider it every 30 days on a rolling basis. The board also approved a broader effort to improve how the county delivers mental health care to people experiencing homelessness, including more services on the street in shelters and in encampments. Supervisor Horvath also introduced a motion to explore creating a regional wildfire prevention authority for the Santa Monica Mountains so agencies can work together more effectively on brush clearance, vegetation management, and fire prevention. The county is also reviewing whether road work or other activities in high fire danger zones could be paused during red flag days and put that officially into county policy, when weather conditions make wildfire risks especially high. Right now, Southern California Edison, as well as Public Works, is doing a lot of repaving or undergrounding in our Santa Monica Mountains communities. If that is happening, there's kind of an unspoken policy right now that those agencies or groups will not be doing their work during a red flag days. This just kind of puts it into the official policy in the county, so that moving forward, if we have a PDS or a red flag day, that is not occurring, so that we can make sure that people can get out of their community if they need to and evacuate quickly. That is all I have, but happy to take any questions if you have any.
Thank you for that very thorough overview. Are there any questions or comments from the council? Councilmember Sylvester?
I'd just like a follow-up question on the unhoused mental health services. So will you have mobile teams that will go out into the field, or how will that work, like with our homeless coordinator for the COG?
Yes, so the notes that I have on this is that what it does do is, yes, it expands field-based mental health services for unhoused individuals, and it really emphasizes meeting people where they are. So there will be teams, and I believe that there's additional funding going into that as well.
So if Gabriel has a need, who would he reach out to?
I would say right now, before I have all of the information, I would just reach out to our office. I'll put him in contact with Jonah, and then we can make sure that there's a direct line between him and the Department of Mental Health.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Daniel, thank you so much for coming out. We really appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you for going easy on me tonight. I'll see you next month. Thank you.
See you Friday.
Oh, let me, I forgot to say, I have my amazing colleagues here tonight. I have J.C. Carter, who is our constituent advocate and emergency services liaison, and then Paige Hajalu, who is our new field deputy, who will be covering parts of the valley, but she's also a local. She lives in Newberry Park, so she thought she'd stop by on her way home tonight.
Thank you guys,
Thank you guys.
for coming. No pressure. If you want to address the council, you can. Otherwise, it's great to meet you guys. So thank you for coming. Thank you. Moving right along, for our Agoura Hills quarterly library update, I'm going to defer to our interim community library manager, Rachel Lizotte. Is that correct? Lizotte. Okay, thank you. Wonderful to see you.
Good evening, Mayor Wolf, City Manager Hamburger, City Council, and the city staff. My name is Rachel Lizotte. I'm the interim library manager for Agoura Hills Library. I used to be the children's librarian here at Agoura Hills from 2018 to 2022, so I'm happy to be back. This is the quarterly report for the library. We currently host 6 active book clubs and 2 passive ones, offering a wide range of opportunities for readers in our community. Since Nina's retirement, I have taken over both the popular Agoura Readers Book Club and the Nonfiction Book Club. In addition, we offer a romantasy book club, Darkest Hour, which is our mystery book club, a middle school age book club, a silent book club, and 2 more passive book clubs for children. Our children's librarian, Sarah, leads weekly toddler story times every Thursday at 10:30 a.m. She also hosts a highly popular music and movement programs for babies, which we just had at 5 o'clock. One of her most successful programs is the Pokemon Trainers League, where school-age children can learn gameplay and build skills to become Pokemon trainers. Looking ahead, we have exciting children's programming in May, including a Shadow Puppet Folktale program and a Dia de los Niños art program. For teens, librarian Katie offers a variety of engaging and supporting programs. Upcoming events include workshops designed to help teens find the right college fit, as well as meetings of the Teen Advisory Board, where participants can collaborate and make a positive impact in their community. We will also be hosting or offering a financial literacy and budgeting programs for teens later this month. Katie also coordinates a number of fun and enriching programs for adults, including movie matinees, team trivia, a DIY watercolor workshop, a puzzle swap, and a special event featuring the Sisters in Crime Los Angeles. All of these programs, along with their dates and times, are listed on the Agoura Hills Library website. Space may be limited at some programs, so community members can check and/or register online or call the library, where we are happy to assist with registration. Coming up is National Library Week. It takes place this year, the week of April 19th to the 25th. It is a celebration highlighting the valuable role libraries, librarians, and library workers play in transforming lives and strengthening our communities. LA County Library as a whole is also participating in One Book, One Coast, which brings together library systems across California, Washington State, and Oregon for a shared community reading program that celebrates literacy, learning, and community and civil discourse. All participating libraries will read and discuss They Called Us Enemy by George Takei, with physical copies of the book available to borrow. And starting April 1st, unlimited digital copies in the ebook form via the Libby app via Overdrive. Thank you for your time, and I hope you all have a good evening.
Great. Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome to this role. Do any council members have questions or comments? Seeing or hearing none, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Going to move on to our Clean Power Alliance update. I'll defer to our Mayor Pro Tem, Klein Lopez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I start, I want to welcome the new members of Team Horvath, and I meant to say during that moment, it came to me afterwards, I hope you read, there's an article in the LA Times today about field deputies and casework, and as someone who has done that work, it really spoke to me, and so I encourage you to read it. I just pulled it up. It's in today's paper by Kabira Stokes, who was a deputy for the city of LA, but it talks about your important work. And so thank you for being here and for being there for your constituents. With that, I will continue on with the update about with Clean Power Alliance. It was a very exciting meeting we had last week. First of all, my time as chair is coming to an end. I've been chair for 2 years already, and it was actually April of 2 years ago. I started a little early, and my term goes through the end of June of this year. And so we elected our next board chair. It is Robert Parkhurst, who's a council member from Sierra Madre. He begins on July 1st, and just want to give a public welcome to our new chair, Director Parkhurst. The other things we talked about were also very exciting. We are moving into the ownership space of things. So as you know from some of the projects we've had even here in Agoura Hills, when we brought in our Power Ready program, which puts solar panels on roofs and backup batteries for our partner agencies, we have been doing that through contractors, and we've been outsourcing it. And the comment that stuck with me, when you're dealing with a lot of different cities and unincorporated areas, it's you're only as fast as your slowest partner. So we have, City of Agoura Hills, we've been ready for a long time, but because every other city who's been waiting for these investments in their community has not been as quick and adept as we have been, we've had to wait. So now we're talking about actually owning the actual equipment, the infrastructure, so that we can be more nimble about getting these projects up and running in our member cities. I want to give a shout out to our finance team, because one of the things we did at Clean Power Alliance is we approved moving to a 2-year budget. And I said it works so well for a City of Agoura Hills, and we really like it, and it's great. So we're moving to a 2-year budget. We talked about rates outlooks for the next year. And finally, I got some good news actually right before I came in here. Clean Power Alliance is sponsoring a bill that, again, not only talks about asset ownership here very locally, but we're looking at really dealing with the affordability crisis of utilities by trying to get into the asset ownership space on transmission lines. So right now, a municipal entity like DWP can own transmission lines, investor-owned utilities can own transmission lines, but community choice aggregates like CPA cannot. And so we're running a bill, we're sponsoring a bill, and our wonderful Assemblymember Jackie Irwin is running that bill.
Oh, wow.
And I just got news that it passed out of the Utilities and Energy Committee 14-0. So it's great news, great things happening at Clean Power Alliance, and that is my update. Thank you.
Thank you for that update. Any questions from council? Seeing or hearing none, moving on to public comments. This section is reserved for individuals wishing to speak on items not listed on the agenda that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. If you have materials to distribute to the council, please do not approach the dais. Instead, provide them to the city clerk for distribution on your behalf. Public testimony is limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and a speaker's time may not be transferred to another speaker. Individuals addressing the council shall refrain from disorderly conduct that disrupts or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of the meeting. I will now defer to the city clerk for public comment.
Thank you. We did not receive any written correspondence, nor do we have any speaker cards.
Thank you. For the consent calendar, this section is reserved for persons wishing to speak on items on the consent calendar. I will now defer to the city clerk for public comment.
We did not receive any written correspondence, nor do we have any speaker cards.
Are there any questions from the council on the consent calendar? I will now call for a motion and a second to adopt the consent calendar. Will the makers of the motion and the second state your name?
Councilmember Chris Anstead, I make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Councilmember Anderson seconds.
Now defer to the city clerk for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Anderson,
Aye.
Councilmember Anstead,
Aye.
Councilmember Sylvester,
Aye.
Mayor.
Aye. Oh, Mayor Pro Tem, yeah, sorry.
We didn't hear the pro
Yeah,
tem part.
it was
I didn't
slow.
hear
I
the pro
heard
tem
mayor
part.
and it was a pause and I
Lopez.
wasn't paying attention.
Mayor Pro Tem Klein Lopez.
Aye.
Mayor Wolf.
Aye.
Mayor Wolf, you have approval 5-0.
Thank you. Okay, getting serious. Public hearing, ordinance number 4. Our next item is to conduct a public hearing to consider waiving full reading and introducing ordinance number 26-487, a zoning ordinance amendment concerning accessory equipment in residential and commercial zones and uses subject to director's review and approval in residential zones. I will now open up the public hearing and defer to Associate Planner Eric Wong for the staff presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. The item before you this evening is a zoning ordinance amendment concerning accessory equipment and residential uses, also known as ordinance number 26487. So on this evening's agenda, we'll just be going over background of the ordinance, discussion of the substance of the ordinance, CEQA considerations, and staff recommendation. So starting with the background, in previous council goal-setting sessions, City Council identified some issues with our zoning ordinance, including inconsistency with the climate action goals and some burden on homeowners due to the inflexible language of the code. So City Council directed staff to bring amendments to council pertaining to residential equipment and other minor revisions that address these identified issues. For the timeline of this ordinance, started in December 15, 2025, when it was brought to the Land Use Economic Development Subcommittee, and then headed over to the Planning Commission for a public hearing on March 5th, 2026, with the same night having action from Planning Commission to recommend the council adopt the ordinance, draft ordinance as drafted. This is known as Resolution 26-1316. So currently we're in this public hearing right now in front of City Council, and within 21 days of the closing of this public hearing, Council may either approve the ordinance as drafted, approve the ordinance with modifications, or disapprove it. So onto the discussion of the actual substance of the ordinance, starting with accessory equipment. Within the city, accessory equipment can be kind of categorized into 3 different types, but the ones we're going to focus right now on are wall-mounted and ground-mounted equipment. Concerning wall-mounted equipment, currently wall-mounted equipment is disallowed in residential zones indirectly from Section 9132.1 subsection G, whereas ground-mounted equipment, although there's more explicitly allowed, some of the explicitly allowed equipment can have some burdensome requirements concerning screening, as shown on 9606.1. Both exterior wall-mounted equipment and newer ground-mounted equipment aren't mentioned in code, at least the newer types. So these newer types include tankless water heaters, emergency battery energy storage systems, generators, whether it be solar or internal combustion, as well as heat pumps. So what is technically currently allowed? So currently for ground-mounted equipment, specifically for mechanical equipment, you have your typical ones that were existed in the 80s. So HVAC equipment, pool equipment, all those sorts of things. However, the requirement is pretty stringent. It has to be screened on all sides by a wall or a fence and can't be placed in the front yard. For wall-mounted equipment, the only 2 that are explicitly allowed in code are flat plate collectors in connection with PV systems and also air conditioners. And again, as I mentioned before, a lot of the newer types aren't mentioned in code or captured. So because the code is silent, there's no real clear path for staff to determine the appropriateness of any proposed newer types of equipment. So the ordinance changes sections 9132.1 and section 9606.1 to be more permissible to both ground-mounted and wall-mounted equipment. For mechanical ground-mounted equipment, screening can be waived by the director if determined feasible, and it can be located in front of the property as long as it's visibly screened from public view and if it's placed outside the required setbacks. For wall-mounted equipment, again, the ordinance does include some explicitly allowed captured types of equipment now, but in general for equipment, if there's a non-captured type, there is a provision. It's kind of a catch-all provision. This would be a staff-level determination, and this would be allowed if placed in the rear yard and as long as the equipment doesn't create a public nuisance. So right here in front of you in this picture, you can see some technically currently existing non-conforming equipment. This specific example is front yard mounted, ground mounted AC unit. This was established before city incorporation, so it was allowed under county code, but because when the city incorporated, we didn't really technically allow that under our zoning ordinance. It's considered existing non-conforming. If the ordinance were to be enacted, this would be allowed as long as the HVAC was properly screened from public visibility. The next one is an example of a tankless water heater found in the city. This is wall-mounted equipment. It's technically disallowed under current code because it isn't captured within our code. And again, would be allowed pursuant to set standards under the proposed code found in the ordinance. And this is just a general picture, generic picture of a backup battery. These usually can be either ground or wall mounted. And again, they're not captured as specific types of equipment under our current code, but would be captured under the ordinance and would be required to follow any standards that are in the existing code. In addition, all these types of equipment would also need to meet other standards concerning health, safety, general well-being, for example, the fire code and the building code. So the next portion of the ordinance, which the ordinance addresses, is uses within the very low density residential district or RV district. So currently, uses within the RV zoning district, specifically uses allowed by director review, which is an administrator hearing, are listed in section 9222.3, whereas uses specific uses allowed by a conditional use permit, which is a typical planning commission hearing, that's a public hearing, are listed in 9222.4. The ordinance addresses two specific uses that are currently listed under 9222.3. So again, that's the administrator hearing, that being commercial riding academies and stables, as well as private recreation clubs. So concerning commercial riding academies and stables, due to the prevalence of private streets within the RV zoning district, as well as any considerations due to circulation evacuation from commercial riding academies and stables, staff believes it's more appropriate to put commercial riding academies and stables under the conditional use permit uses, just because a conditional use permit, again, allows for a public hearing to be open in front of a planning commission. So any concerns the public may have on this proposed use could be explored, but also any conditions can be implemented on the proposed use that would address said concerns by either the planning commission or city residents. Concerning private recreation clubs, the actual definition of a private recreation club describes a homeowners association. And HOAs are allowed without permit in all other residential zoning districts without review, as they're not directly tied with the use of land. So in this case, staff believes it's more appropriate for private recreation clubs to be removed from the section. So the ordinance in itself would remove the mention of private recreation clubs from sections 9222.3, which is that use is allowed by director's review, but also in the definitions in section 9120.17. Concerning CEQA, the staff believes this action qualifies for exemption, specifically under State CEQA Guidelines Section 15061B3, which is known as the common sense exemption. That's because adopting a municipal code text amendment has no possibility to result in a significant effect on the environment itself. And individual projects that include anything captured within this zoning ordinance amendment, albeit wall or ground mounted equipment or uses subject to now a CUP, would be individually reviewed for CEQA compatibility when necessary. So with that, staff respectfully recommends the City Council conduct a public hearing, waive full reading, and introduce ordinance number 26-487, an ordinance of the City Council of Agoura Hills, California, amending the Agoura Hills Municipal Code to amend regulations related to equipment in residential and commercial zones and uses subject to director's review and approval in residential zones, and making a determination of exemption under the California Environmental Quality Act. With that, staff's presentation's over, and staff's available for questions.
Great presentation, Eric. Thank you so much. Before we move on to public comments, do any council members have any questions of staff? Councilmember Anstead?
I appreciate the presentation. One question that came to mind about the wall-mounted is the EV charging stations. Does the current code allow for that on the side of the wall, or tell me how?
So technically, no, because it's not explicitly mentioned in code if it's exteriorly mounted. If it's interior, then we don't really look at it.
So my question is, under this new revision, would the exterior that's got coverage or whatever it is that's not seen, would that be covered under this or not?
Are you talking about if the EV charging equipment, right? And you're talking about the cover itself for the EV charging equipment?
Yeah, it's just where the plug goes, basically,
yes.
for the EV charger.
Yes.
In the residential homes. Would that be covered under this or not?
The actual, so you're talking about not the fixture, but the plug for like a level 1 or level 2 charger?
I'm not sure if I know the difference between a level 1 and a level 2 charger.
Are you talking about like a outlet or actual like, connected hardwired to like a box?
It would be the outlet, but I guess it has basically the configuration for where you put the hose or whatever it is for the charger.
Yeah, it would be allowed.
Would be allowed?
Yeah, it would be covered under,
Division?
correct.
Okay.
Any other questions at this point? Okay, the public hearing is now open. I will defer to City Clerk for public comments on this item.
Thank you. We did not receive any written correspondence, nor are there any speaker cards.
Before closing the public hearing, do any council members have any further questions of staff on this? Seeing or hearing none, I will now close the public hearing. We'll now move on to deliberation. Since this went to Land Use and Economic Development, I will start with Mayor Pro Tem Klein Lopez.
Thank you. We had a very robust conversation. We definitely wanted to make sure that our code is consistent with state law. First of all, there's no point in having code that state laws can then usurp or that we're knowingly out of code. So I appreciate the efforts to make sure we're consistent with what's coming down the pike from the state, as well as clean up the parts that needed cleaning up. And then more importantly, it was really important for us to be consistent with our climate action and adaptation plan. And this does that in the sense that it doesn't discourage tankless water heaters and heat pumps and batteries, but we still had like I said, a pretty robust discussion about being able to screen when it's possible, because we know that the aesthetics of our neighborhood are also very important. So we think that staff's done a great job with this in being able to make sure that the aesthetics are as strongly protected as possible while still ensuring that we're meeting our goals of moving towards a friendlier climate equipment, as well as being more consistent with state law. So Eric did a great job in subcommittee and here as well, and I'm ready to proceed. The only request I would have is to definitely make sure that we get this message out very clearly to our HOAs, because sometimes HOAs like to think that their bylaws usurp some of our city ordinances and even state law. So oftentimes a homeowner will try to do something and then get told by an HOA that it's not allowed. So I would just ask staff to be really, aggressive in making sure that our HOAs know about this change. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Sylvester?
Yes, first I'd like to thank Eric for an excellent presentation, very succinct, and I agree with everything my fellow council member said. This is long overdue. We've all got batteries hanging on the walls, we've all got car chargers, and we need to update our code to reflect that. So I'm ready to move forward. Thank you.
Well said. Councilmember Anderson?
This seems like a no-brainer. Thank you so much for taking the time to recognize that this needed to be updated. And I will echo what my fellow what Mayor Pro Tem Klein Lopez said, that she appreciates the protecting the aesthetics while balancing the need for advancing our sustainability goals. And I just want to say, I love that we're screening it. That picture you showed of the track in front of the house, that's not allowed now, and that it would be allowed, but with proper screening, because you look at that and you're like, ooh. So I super appreciate the screening aspect.
Councilmember Anstead?
I'm definitely a yes on making the changes here, and I think obviously trying to be in line with our climate action plan is something that's positive, and so definitely feel like we need to move forward with this change. Thanks.
Thank you, and I echo all the comments. I appreciate that we're going to be consistent with state law. As was mentioned, clean up some parts that needed cleaning up, and the consistency with our climate action plan to really incentivize tankless heaters and heat pumps and batteries, because it's the wave of the future, and so I'm glad that we're getting on this now. I'm in full support. So with that, I will now call for a motion and a second to approve the staff recommendation to waive full reading and introduce ordinance number 26-487. Can I get a motion and a second?
I'll make a motion. Deborah Klein Lopez.
And Councilmember Sylvester seconds.
Now defer to the city clerk for roll call.
Councilmember Anderson, Councilmember Anstead,
Aye.
Councilmember Sylvester,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Klein Lopez,
Aye.
Mayor Wolf.
Aye.
Mayor Wolf, you have approval, 5-0.
Moving on to ordinance and action item number 5. Our next item was continued from the regular meeting of March 11th, 2026, and is a discussion to waive full reading and introduce ordinance number 26-485, amending Article 3, Public Safety of Agoura Hills Municipal Code by adding new Chapter 10, regulating electric mobility devices. I will now defer to Director of Public Works and City Engineer Charmaine Yambao for the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Wolf and members of the City Council. Tonight we are proposing ordinance number 26485, which addresses the use and regulation of electric bicycles within our city. As electric bicycles, commonly known as e-bikes, continue to grow in popularity, they offer many benefits, including increased mobility, reduced traffic congestion, and environmentally friendly transportation. However, the rapid use among youth of our community has also raised important questions around safety, appropriate usage, and how they integrate in public spaces with pedestrians, traditional bicycles, and motor vehicles. Ordinance number 26485 is intended to provide the framework for the where and how e-bikes may be operated and to ensure that their use aligns with the well-being of our residents and public spaces. I will now hand it over to Amy Brink, Director of Community Services, to start off our presentation.
Thank you, Charmaine. Good evening, City Council. This evening's agenda includes a review of the background on the e-bike issue, the California Vehicle Code governance, types of electric mobility devices, the timeline of how we reached today, the education and engagement component. We will look at the official ordinance and then complete the presentation with staff recommendation, opening it up for questions. Much of this has already been reviewed by City Council at the March 11th City Council meeting, but for those of you who might be joining us for the first time, we can quickly go through some of the slides again. So let's get started. The use of e-bikes is on the rise and thus creating many challenges and public safety concerns for our residents in town. As many of you know, the City Council included in their annual fiscal year 2025-26 goals, a goal to review and amend the electric bicycle rules and regulations. This would also include amending the Agoura Hills Municipal Code. E-bikes and motorized bicycles have become more popular and more accessible to people of all ages. They are convenient, they are fun, but they are also raising concerns with regard to public safety for pedestrians, drivers, and e-bike users. Up and down the state, cities are experiencing an increase in issues with e-bikes and e-bike users, which creates a real public safety concern. Those safety concerns include the use of e-bikes in inappropriate areas of the public, use at higher rates of speed, and use with a lack of compliance with traffic rules, all of which has brought us here today. There's an increase in risk of collisions as we see an increase of e-bikes in parks, in mixed traffic, and on public sidewalks. Let's take a quick look at the California Vehicle Code and how that plays into the overall governance. And now at this point, I would like to turn the presentation back over to Charmaine to talk about the California Vehicle Code.
The California Vehicle Code, also known as CVC, governs electric mobility devices such as e-bikes on public roadways. The CVC's classifications and operation regulations of these devices are complicated, which contributes to the confusion among users. And the CVC also lacks required education, particularly for the younger users, on proper behaviors and protocols for operation of e-bikes. The CVC does not comprehensively regulate the use of electric mobility devices in areas outside of public roadways, such as sidewalks, parks, recreational trails and facilities, and bicycle paths. The operation of these devices on sidewalks and parks are left with discretion to cities and counties to adopt local regulations tailored to their own local conditions and safety considerations. This slide is simply to give you a visual about how complex the classifications and regulations are for electric mobility devices. The next few slides provide the progress timeline of the steps taken to where we are today. The regulation of electric mobility devices, particularly e-bikes, will have a community-wide effect. This first slide shows the steps staff completed over the past year, working in collaboration with the city traffic engineer, Lost Hills Sheriff Station, and the Las Virgenes Unified School District to provide a comprehensive discussion, a meaningful approach to e-bike regulations, enforcement, and education opportunities. There were several presentations to the Community Service Subcommittee and the City Council. Were done in a step-by-step process to discuss, receive feedback, and develop a framework to regulate e-bikes. On the slide here, we have several dates that show when we presented to the Community Services Subcommittee and the City Council. On March 11th, 2026, staff presented to the City Council a proposed electric mobility device ordinance. The ordinance proposed a new Chapter 10 under Article 3, Public Safety, with a framework prohibiting the use of these devices on city-owned facilities, such as public sidewalks, parks, recreation areas, and trails, with the enforcement for these new regulations. The proposed enforcement of the new regulations included the operator allowing law enforcement to inspect devices during lawful encounters to ensure compliance, and establishment of violations as infractions for the first 2 infringements, with an escalation to a misdemeanor upon a 3rd violation. Following discussion of the proposed ordinance, City Council directed staff to revisit the enforcement section and review different options specific to minors violating the proposed ordinance, and to continue the item to a future City Council meeting. I will now hand the presentation back to Amy to conclude our progress timeline and touch briefly on e-bike education options.
Thank you again, Charmaine. The Community Services Subcommittee recently held a meeting on March 24th, 2026, where they discussed options for enforcement, which included the suggested Los Angeles County Youth Diversion Program. As outlined in the staff report, it was communicated that the diversion program may not be appropriate for violators of the proposed e-bike ordinance, as the program provides counseling and group meetings for youth that have been arrested for potential violent crimes, aggressive behaviors, or drug use and addiction. Staff also looked into the use of the state institution and welfare code with specific sections that related to frequent truancy from school. After consideration, staff and the city attorney proposed adding language that would authorize the city prosecutor or its designee to allow the violator, and if a minor, their parents to complete an electric mobility device safety education program at the violator's expense. At this meeting, modified language was presented to the subcommittee with the request for feedback on when the education program should be mandated. The feedback was such that at the city prosecutor or designee's discretion to allow the safety education program upon any violation. The subcommittee was supportive of the modified language that included the added option of safety education. To review education and engagement, the goal will be to offer or provide in-person workshops and online training for those who are required to participate. It will also be available to those who would like to proactively participate. If the council recalls, we spoke of 2 different types of programs that staff has been actively engaged with. One program is It Needs to End, which is a local nonprofit who did make a presentation to the Community Services Subcommittee. And you can see on the slide that they present group workshops that are in person. It's usually $6,000 a workshop, approximately $40 a person, because they can take up to 150 students at a time. And it is a very hands-on, realistic training on how to use an e-bike. The other option will be an online individual training course through Electric Bike Academy, whose staff has also been in talks with. A very local nonprofit group that's provided this and created an online training course. This particular course would be $50 a person, individual education, and a completion certificate would be provided. Education and enforcement has always been at the forefront of this effort. The outreach and communication will continue to be robust, intentional, and far-reaching across the community. I will now turn it back over to Charmaine one last time, who is going to present the ordinance, including enforcement in detail and how it will logistically be implemented.
These next 3 slides details proposed ordinance 26485, which is being presented here today for City Council's consideration for approval and adoption. Ordinance 26485 proposes to amend Article 3, Public Safety of the City's Municipal Code, adding a new Chapter 10, regulating electric mobility devices. The proposed new chapter includes reference to the California Vehicle Code in its most current version. It also provides definitions used for this chapter, such as bicycle, electric mobility device, which are also defined by the CVC, the operator of these devices, parks and public area operated or owned by the city, and further defines unsafe manner of operating these devices and as any manner whatsoever that displays a willful or wanton disregard for the safety of other person or property. The proposed new chapter regulates the operation of these devices, banning the operation from these devices from public sidewalks, public drainage facilities, culverts, ditches, or channels, any area outside of any roadway or other paved public area, any park, public athletic field, athletic sports court, or gymnasium in the city, equestrian trail, hiking, or recreational trail in the city, and any public area where bicycles or motor vehicles are prohibited. And if lawfully stopped by a police officer, the operators of these devices shall allow inspection of their device to determine if the rider is legally allowed to operate the device. The enforcement section of the ordinance reflects the feedback received from the Community Services Subcommittee. The chapter's enforcement is outlined as follows. The operator's first and second violation of this proposed chapter within 1 year of each shall be an infraction, as set forth under Article 1, Chapter 2, Section 1200B of the Agoura Hills Municipal Code. The penalties for the first infraction is $100 and $200 for the second. An operator's third violation or subsequent violation of this chapter within 1 year of the last violation shall be a misdemeanor, punishable by a fine of not more than $1,000. If the operator is a juvenile, officers will make a reasonable effort to contact the parent or legal guardian, and the parent or legal guardian of the minor shall be jointly and severally liable with the minor to pay the fines. And at any level of the enforcement, the city prosecutor has a discretion to allow the violator, and if it's a minor, with their parents, to complete an electric mobility device safety education program at the violator's expense in lieu of paying the fine. There are exemptions to the regulations set by the new chapter, and those exemptions include persons with mobility disabilities utilizing a wheelchair or other power-driven mobility device in accordance with the American Disability Act and Title 28 of the Code of Federal Regulations, and city and other public agency personnel who may operate electric mobility devices at any place in the performance of their work-related duties. Ordinance 26485 is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to Section 15061B3 on the grounds that the regulations on the operation of electric mobility devices in public places and off-street parking lots will not have a significant effect on the environment. And the effective date of the ordinance shall be 30 days after final adoption of ordinance number 26485. And with that, staff respectfully recommends the City Council waive the full reading and introduce ordinance number 26485, amending the Agoura Hills Municipal Code to establish electric mobility device regulations and making a finding of exemption pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act. That concludes our presentation, and we're here to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we move on to public comment, does any council members have any questions of staff? See Council Member Sylvester, we'll start with you.
Yes, I have a question. Are you aware of one of the emails we received from one of our residents about their concern with the ADA legal compliance? Candice, I don't know if you saw this. So I'd just like to be reassured that we haven't left ourselves open to anything.
With regard to the ADA language, I don't believe there's any need to revise the ordinance. My understanding is that city staff will be working with the sheriff's department internally to make sure that everyone complies with the ADA. The language itself is fine, it's just really the execution that's important, and we can do that internally.
Okay, and his other concern with, I've forgotten what was he saying? Oh, device inspection. Again, we are covered, correct?
We did look into that, and I do feel that what they're looking at is the size of battery in many cases, which is visible from the street or when they're standing next to the bike. I understand the comment made by the gentleman, and it's not meant to search a backpack or a pouch or something. It's meant to look at the equipment of the bike and how, because that determines the speed of the mobility device.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that for our residents, that we're on solid footing here. I have no other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sylvester, Councilmember Anderson, and then Mayor Pro Tem.
Actually, just on that same email to our sheriff deputy, and my eyesight's not good enough to be able to read your name from all the way back here, but he says that he has personally witnessed sheriff's deputies operating motorcycles northbound on the sidewalk. I'm curious if you have any understanding of why sheriffs might be riding on the sidewalk.
So my guess is it's probably one of our motor deputies that he's finding the best place to position himself to do traffic enforcement. A lot of times being on the shoulder, you are now a target, and I would rather my motor deputy be off the road and in a safe area where he can do his enforcement safely. And also he's covered under, I believe it's 21055 of the California Vehicle Code that basically exempts law enforcement from certain things like that while they're in the course of their duties.
Thank you. I knew that there was a good explanation to it, and the constituent, and I just want to thank him for taking the time. Like, he went ahead and drafted possible amendments for us, so I think it was wonderful of him to do that. And his concern was consistency and safety, and there's a really good reason why your officers would be on the sidewalk that would not apply to any of our e-bike riders, so thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Klein Lopez.
Thank you. I just want to clarify, make sure I'm understanding it correctly. So when it gets to the third violation, the prosecutor can designate an education program. That's for anyone, regardless of their age, correct? And the clarification is if it's a minor, they can or must go with their parent or guardian.
That is correct, and actually, it could be at any level of the violations, either the first, second, or third.
Great, great. And then I remember from the last discussion we had on this that we're really not, we don't have flexibility in the amount of fines of 100, 200, I think there's a 500 if we were to choose it, and then 1,000 is the max. But does it have to be 1,000 in lieu of, or could it be both?
The ordinance actually calls in lieu of, but I can defer to Candace. I think it's up to the discretion of the prosecutor, the city prosecutor.
You're asking, Mayor Pro Tem, if it could be both, that they have to pay the the fine, and they'd have to do education.
Correct. That was my understanding when we talked about it last time, was that it would be an added layer of teeth to the
I think the idea is from staff's understanding, the main concern was that people were educated sufficiently, and maybe someone would not be incentivized to have to pay for education program and pay the citation or pay the fine, and so it's allowing them the option. And obviously the city prosecutor or the designee would be kind of aware of the circumstances, are they contrite, are they willing to learn, do they want, or is it someone who is a bad actor, in which case that education option wouldn't even be provided to them.
So I thought it was going to be an education mandate plus $1,000, because our concern last time was that, you know, for $1,000, it's just not a lot of teeth for parents in particular who are just going to go right out and buy their child another e-bike. So in the spirit of trying to make this as strong as possible, or at least the option to be as strong as possible, I was just curious if that can be either a fourth level or included in the third level. But I don't know if then that violates the $1,000 restriction that we're bound to. Sorry, that just came to me, like I wish I would have thought of it sooner to give you a chance to look at it, but when I saw it up there as in lieu of, it prompted me to think, can we mandate both? Or a prosecutor, can the prosecutor?
I mean, truthfully, that is not something that any of us considered. Our understanding it was as an option, and that the council wanted to provide the option of educating people so that they wouldn't be bad actors. Yeah, I think we'd have to look at that.
Well, I don't want to delay this anymore, but my fear is that we were all concerned last time that $1,000 in the end is the top, fine, is just not a real strong disincentive to bad behavior. And sure, we would love people to have the option to be educated. We all know that that doesn't happen as often as we'd like it to. So but what I don't know is if you're layering the education program on top of the 1,000, does that then get you outside the range of the very strict?
That's exactly my concern, is that is not something we have researched.
I wonder if we can mandate it, we say that the fine is up to $1,000, including the cost of that education.
May I make a suggestion that we go with the wording we have now? We can always come back and review this.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, when we have our,
If
this is just my
working.
questions.
Yeah.
But ultimately, when we have our consideration, I will explain these concerns that I don't want to delay any longer. However, I also, and we can always come back. However, my concern is that there's still not a lot of teeth in this, which, we can come back and make it stronger. But my question is, does it have to be in lieu of? So that question can remain unanswered. It's okay.
And I think once the parents attend one of these training sessions.
But they don't have to. That's my question.
Well, they do.
No, they don't. It's an option in lieu of. That's my question.
But what I'm saying is, oh, you mean in the final one, so they don't have to go to any education at all?
They can pay $1,000 and not do any of this. Is that correct? If the prosecutor says
They can pay 100, 200.
100, 200, and we get to the third one, the prosecutor is then going to say either or I guess what happens at number 3?
It's not just number 3, it's...
Or at any time?
Yeah, at any time.
Oh, so we've absolved them of ever doing education by giving them a $1,000 fine?
This is my question.
You don't have, they don't have to do education. But the thought process is usually the course of the education, whether it's usually cheaper than $1,000. So the idea is most people would probably choose education.
I disagree that most people would choose education, because I think that a lot of times the bad actors, they're just going to pay the $1,000 and move along. So that's my question is, how much teeth is in this statement that the prosecutor can designate an education program for the violator and his or her parents at their expense?
It says the city prosecutor or designee has the discretion to allow a violator, so the violator can decide. If the council really wants teeth, we can go back to the misdemeanor 1,000 or
Right.
potential jail time.
Right. Which I'm not suggesting. I just want to make it super clear that this is not a mandated, I'm asking,
Yeah.
this is not a mandated program that we are saying the prosecutor can force someone to go to, which is, I think, what our goal was, we were hoping for last time. But I don't know that we have that ability, is my question.
So
Well, is it a question or deliberation?
actually, it is a question.
Okay, so
So I'm curious if the prosecutor at the third violation has the option to not charge the youth or the offender with a misdemeanor, because that's teeth. Like, I don't know about you, I don't have a misdemeanor on my record, and if either of my pumpkins got a misdemeanor on their record, I would be through the roof. Like, a misdemeanor ain't no joke. So that's teeth. So I'm curious if the prosecutor has the authority.
No, we do have to state very clearly with every violation, like setting the expectation of what type of violation it is. So we can't say that the third violation is a wobbler of an infraction or a misdemeanor. We're required to provide a certain level of certainty of what each violation will result in.
So let me ask my question. That makes sense to me. Let me ask my question differently, though it may still be the same answer. So you got a kid who's had his first violation and a second violation. They get caught a third time. Does the prosecutor have prosecutorial discretion to not charge the offender with a misdemeanor?
Well, it wouldn't, in this case, as it's written, it's not charging them with a misdemeanor. It's just, it's a misdemeanor fine. So they're not going to charge them criminally or they're not going to jail. It's just, when you're under the misdemeanor umbrella, you can do jail time or $1,000. Based on the discussion that we had last time, it sounded like the council wanted to take jail off the table. That's why we just said misdemeanor punishable by $1,000. So there's still no discretion.
They would have a misdemeanor on their
No, I don't. I mean, I think the sheriff's department can answer this better, but it's not like they're going to be charged by the DA. It's not going to be like the city prosecutor is going to charge them with a misdemeanor in court. It's just pay the fine.
But they still have a misdemeanor on their record.
I don't think it's on the record.
we'll defer to Deb.
My understanding is if we're going misdemeanor, that's when we can kind of hold over like diversion kind of thing. But they don't send it to the court for further filing. So that way it doesn't become a conviction. At least our juvenile team, that's what they do. They don't forward it to the DA's office for filing. They hold it over till the person does diversion and completes it, and then they basically drop the charges.
Terrific.
I'm going to interject with a question right now to maybe frame some of the other questions. What is the cost of the safety and education program?
Good question, Mayor Wolf. So simply stated, an online program is $50. That is the direct quote from the Electric Bike Academy. It needs to end is a little bit different because they do group workshops. So we would have to have a handful of violators that we would run through that workshop. But you can see both of them are about $40, $50 a class.
So that is the same workshop that we are referring to as the safety education program, which would be the what they're being told they have to do.
That is correct, and I will caveat that because I think I understand where you're going. The Electric Bike Academy does offer different levels. The entry-level one is $50. I think depending on how much detail you get into it, it could be up to $150 to $200. But I haven't seen anything more than, let's say, $150 to $200 per class for the program.
And then walking through the process, they would be through the city prosecutor told that they have a $100 fine or the safety education program. They go with the safety education program, then the city would need a monitor to make sure that it's done. And is there a timeline of from when they're issued that they need to do the safety program to then completing?
They would be required to present a certificate of completion.
Okay.
I think that we would still need to talk about the tracking and the details of logistically how we would manage and monitor that. I
That's fair.
probably want to throw it back to say if it goes back to the prosecutor's office or if it comes to the city staff first.
Okay.
I don't know.
Who are you throwing it to?
I'm sorry, I was talking
Oh.
to City Attorney Lee,
Okay.
if it would go back to the city prosecutor or if it would come to city
I
staff.
think
I
Nate-
could jump in on that. So, as typical with a lot of things that go to the city prosecutor, there's an expectation on the timeliness of it, and typically we'll establish a reasonable deadline for those. So it's not something that we're going to say you've got a year to do. Typically, most of our violations that we deal with, we try to work with them and try to find a reasonable timeline, but it's not usually more than 60 days is very usually, like there's a real need or extreme situation.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. So I do, before we move on to public comments, are there questions, further questions from the council on this? Okay, now I will defer to the city clerk for public comment.
Thank you. The city did receive a written public comment from Doug Christian, Agoura Hills, that was distributed and will be part of the record, and we do not have any speaker cards.
Thank you. So at this point, are there other questions from the council? I know this is the third time I've asked, but seeing no other questions, we're going to now move on to deliberation. And I'm going to start with the Community Service Committee, and I'll start with Councilmember Anstead, if that's okay.
So we've talked this through quite a bit, and obviously the one thing that I think from the last meeting that we had on this is that we all were in agreement that we need to have some ordinance controlling the e-bikes here in the city. And I'm still totally in agreement with that. We need to move forward. One of the things that we were trying to create with the discussion around the we I think at the time thought it was more mandatory around the education, is that we think that the subcommittee thought it was very important that this is something new. A lot of the kids just don't know what the requirements are with these vehicles or with these e-bikes. And I think the main focus of the city right now is to change the habits of these teenagers and to educate the teenagers here in our city and try to get people to conform to where we want them to be riding, which when these bikes, the majority of them, 90%, are called e-bikes, we want the e-bikes to be operating where the bicycles operate in our city. And so what this ordinance does is try to get them to go to where the normal bikes operate, which is in the bike lane, not on the sidewalks. So we want, with this ordinance, we're trying to create more of a safety here in the city. We're trying to, we want to educate our youth here in Agoura Hills on the fact that they're riding an electric bike. It is a bike, and that they need to operate with the proper rules of the road. We do want to encourage still, I think one of the things from my perspective is that I still want to encourage, this is something that a lot of the kids in our town and in other towns enjoy doing together as a group. It's a group activity. It is getting the kids out of the house and off their phones. So that's not a negative. But the negative is how they're operating the e-bikes. And so what we're saying is you need to operate these vehicles in a safe manner in the proper area. And we're trying to give you numerous chances here to make sure that you are operating them in a safe manner. And we want you to become educated on what that proper thing is. I think we all have seen kids out there on the sidewalks. Every weekend I see a 12-year-old or what looks to be a 12 or 11-year-old operating an e-bike on the sidewalk, and they're going the opposite direction of the flow of people that are walking or riding bikes next to them on the roadways next to the in the bike lanes. And so we need to get them operating in the bike lane in the right direction with the flow of traffic, and that's what we're trying to do with this ordinance. So I'm all for moving forward. I think what we need to do is just to get an ordinance executed, and then we can tweak the ordinance as we go forward. If we see tons of violations early on, and we see tons of violators that are have numerous violations, then we tweak it and we basically say that we're not going to allow all these violations, and we're going to try to clamp down on the violations. So I think we just need to get the ordinance out there. We need to get education out there with our school system. We need to get it in the newspaper, and we need to get it on the city council webpage. And so I'm all for moving forward with this ordinance tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, council member, and thank you for your work on the committee. Councilmember Sylvester?
Thank you. That was very well said, Councilmember Anstead. We want to protect our citizens, the residents who are frightened of being in the parks, frightened of walking on the sidewalks, and this ordinance will do that because it takes the e-bikes out of the parks and off the sidewalks and onto the street. And then hopefully parents will realize their children are no longer just riding in the park or riding on the sidewalk where they thought they were safe. They're now going to be riding in the bike lane on the street with traffic. And I hope every parent who has a child with an e-bike will take the time to ride with them and explain to them the rules of the road. And if they don't, then we're going to start instituting the fines. And so it's my hope that this will be sufficient and this will put an end to it. And if it isn't, then unfortunately we will be back here in 6 months' time and we'll have to make it harsher. But that's not our role. Our role is to educate at this point. And so I hope our residents are listening to that and I can move forward with the ordinance as it is stated. Thank you.
Thank you, council member, and thank you for your work on the committee as well. We'll move to council member Anderson.
So, Councilmember Anstead, Councilmember Sylvester, thank you for your work on the committee. I want to thank city staff and our city attorney for their and our city manager for your creativity in coming up with an ordinance that I think is, as Councilmember Anstead and Sylvester said, hopefully going to get the job done in what we need to be doing. And I really do appreciate what I'm hearing the two of you say. And in hindsight, this is actually would be a question, but I'll put it out there as a hope that we then are keeping tabs on what's happening. You know, I'll be really curious 6 months from now, what are we seeing? Are we seeing a change in behavior, and are we seeing infractions? And love that we can come back and put more teeth into it if we need to.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, and thank you for all of the comments. I really appreciate staff's calendar of how long we've been working on this, and also I think you can tell by how deep these past two agenda items have been on this, is that this isn't easy. You know, we as council members get a lot of comments online and in our emails saying, how come you're not doing anything? And there are these very broad strokes of why aren't we doing anything? And I think it's very clear that this was a goal of the council starting from last year, and it takes a lot of work because it is so complicated. I also appreciate the slide of all the different types of quote-unquote e-bikes, you know, over half a dozen different kinds, and some with kids legally allowed to operate and some not. You know, this is really complicated stuff, and I think as a council, I believe Councilmember Sylvester said, you know, we have to understand what our role is, and we're trying to legislate here, and we're trying to legislate for the middle, but also think about the extremes. We have to think about the kids who are just riding in the parks, not doing anything wrong. We don't want to over punish them, and then we also have to think about the bad actors who are never going to be responding to some of these fines and education things, and the hard part is trying to legislate in the middle of that and make something effective. So it isn't easy, and I really appreciate the discussion. I'll also say that, you know, I still think that there's more of a role here for our state and even our COG to be able to do this as a region, because like a wildfire, an e-bike doesn't know the boundaries of a city. Or what's a park and what's, you know, what's a city-owned sidewalk and what's what's a county-owned trail, right? So I still think there's a lot of work to be done at a larger level, but we definitely have to get something in place so that we're able to try to change some behaviors. The other thing I want to make sure the public understands, and maybe you're getting different messages than I am, but the messages that I get the most of are about kids riding in the street, unsafe riding in the street. They're doing wheelies, they're cutting off traffic, they're swerving in different lanes, and we have to make it clear that that is not what this ordinance addresses, because that's not our jurisdiction. We cannot, as a city, really address the issues of road travel. That really is up to our sheriffs, and we can only address the jurisdiction that we have, which is parks, sidewalks, trails, bike paths, some of our concrete ditches, et cetera. So really need the public to understand that we're doing what we can, but we can't address the whole problem just from this dais. So we are trying. And finally, I agree with my colleagues that it's really important we have something in place. And I would love to ask staff to figure out how we can track some metrics so that if we do need to adjust this at all, we're doing that with hard data for the best type of ordinance. So with that, ready to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, and very eloquent, well thought out comments by the council. I feel the same way. E-bikes offer a great form of mobility. I've been to all the schools and talked to a lot of students, and there are good actors who use it to get to school and as an alternative to being in your car. And so we don't want to be overly punitive, but it's also reached a breaking point with really bad behavior. And so I'm happy that we're putting something forward to signal that in the city of Agoura Hills, we will not tolerate that bad behavior in our jurisdiction, which is parks and sidewalks. But I think that also sends a clearer message that this is something that we will be, that will be enforced, and that bad behavior, hopefully that there's a spillover effect, that bad behavior in our jurisdiction won't be tolerated, and hopefully that is then played out on areas that aren't our jurisdiction. I'm really curious about the metrics as well to see what this looks like, because there is a world in which this is the start and we might need to come revisit this depending on how effective this is, but I do think we need to get something in the books now, and I think the educational component that's going to go with this is going to be critical. Councilmember Anstead said it, but we really need to promote this too, so that residents know that this is something that we are put in our books, that we're taking serious, and there will be consequences to bad actors. With that, I'm ready to move forward with this today, and I'm curious to see what the metrics look like. Appreciative for all the back and forth. I think we landed on something that's a really, really good start. So with that, I will now call for a motion and a second to approve the staff recommendation to waive full reading and introduce ordinance number 26-485. Will the makers of the motion and the second state your name?
Councilmember Sylvester so moves.
Councilmember Anstead seconds.
Now defer to the city clerk for roll call.
Councilmember Anderson.
Aye.
Councilmember Anstead.
Aye.
Councilmember Sylvester.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Klein Lopez.
Aye.
Mayor Wolf.
Aye.
Mayor Wolf, you have approval, 5-0.
Thank you so much. So as heard earlier, discussion and action item number 6 has been pulled from the agenda, so we will not be hearing that tonight. And so I need to skip a few pages on my script here. Okay, so we're now moving on to council and staff comments. Are there any comments from staff? Yay, me.
Thank you, Mayor Wolf. I just wanted to remind the community that we're currently taking signups for our Community Service Days 2026. It's going to be held on Saturday, April 25th, and as usual, we'll meet at Chumash Park. Check-in begins about 8:30, and we get out to our sites by 9 o'clock. We have a very robust list of projects this year, so we're really trying to reach out to the community to engage them and get them to sign up. So please feel free to visit our website. It's on our calendar, and the link to sign up is there as well. So we look forward to seeing everybody there. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from staff?
If I may, just
Please.
one quick one, Mr. Mayor. I just want to congratulate our new Community Development Director, Robbie Nesvik, who I know. Robbie just took the role, stepped in this week, so he's got his hands full with a lot of stuff going on, but I'm confident he'll accomplish all of that. So congratulations.
Thanks, Nate. Really appreciate it, and just so excited to just start getting to work and continue to work with this great community, great council, and great city staff. So thank you.
Well said, and congratulations, Robbie. Are any other comments from staff? Not seeing any. Are there any comments from the city council? Councilmember Anderson?
Okay, I'm going to embarrass myself because I'm not 100% positive about this, but I believe that comments are due for our wildfire protection plan. They've got one more day, right? It's April 9th when they're due? Anybody up there know? Here's the deal. Maybe we'll even take late submissions if it's, yeah?
It is still on our website, but I think it has technically passed. But I just went in there today, and you can submit.
Oh, interesting. All right, so you got until midnight tonight. Anybody who is listening and wants to comment on our wildfire protection plan? Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? I want to compliment the Parks and Community Services Department on a great Breakfast with the Bunny event. There was like 600 kids and families there. It was a lot of staff and a lot of volunteers. It was my first time attending it, and it's like labor intensive. I didn't realize it's a really big deal, and there's a lot of logistics that go into it, and there was a line a block long to take a picture with the bunny, and but it was a great community event, so I was thrilled to be there. Going off of what Amy said, we have our Community Services Day, April 25th. I think we have one more council meeting before then, but we need more volunteers. So if all the council members can put out a call to the volunteers, we need to get more people there. And with that, moving to adjournment, the next regular city council meeting is scheduled for 6 p.m. on April 22nd, 2026 in the council chambers of the Civic Center located at 30001 Ladyface Court, Agoura Hills, California. This meeting is now adjourned.